The morning sun peeked through the blinds of Michael Chen's office as he stared at the spreadsheets on his computer screen. Numbers don't lie, and these numbers told a troubling story. Michael ran his fingers through his graying hair and sighed deeply. At 45, he had spent the last 12 years building Golden Crust Bakery from a single humble shop into a chain of 15 busy locations across 3 states. It was his life's work, his pride and joy. But something was going wrong. These customer complaints just keep coming in, he muttered to himself, scrolling through another angry email about stale bread and rude service. The ratings on review sites had dropped from nearly 5 stars to barely 3 at several locations. Even more concerning were the photos some customers had shared: dirty corners, messy display cases, and tired-looking staff who didn't seem to care anymore. Michael leaned back in his chair, the leather creaking under his weight. He hadn't worked behind the counter in almost 3 years. His days were now filled with expansion plans, investor meetings, and corporate partnerships. The actual running of the bakeries had been left to his team of managers, people he had trusted to keep up the standards he'd built his reputation on. "Mr. Chen?" His assistant Lisa knocked lightly on the door frame. "Your 2 o'clock called to reschedule, and these just came in." She placed another stack of reports on his already cluttered desk. "Thanks, Lisa." He nodded, picking up the top report. It was from his financial team. Profits were down nearly 20% at 3 locations, including the downtown shop where everything had started. The very place where he had once kneaded dough at 4 a.m. every morning, where he had learned every customer's name and coffee order. That night, Michael couldn't sleep. He tossed and turned beside his wife, Anna, who finally turned on the bedside lamp around 2 a.m. "What's eating at you?" she asked, her voice thick with interrupted sleep. "The bakeries," Michael admitted. "Something's not right. The reports, the reviews. I keep asking for explanations from the regional managers, but all I get are excuses." Anna sat up against the headboard. "So what are you going to do about it?" The question hung in the air between them. What would he do? Call more meetings? Hire consultants? Fire people? None of those options would tell him what was really happening on the ground floor. "I need to see it for myself," he finally said. Not as the boss dropping in for an inspection, but as someone who works there. His wife's eyebrows shot up. "You mean like one of those undercover boss shows?" Michael nodded slowly, the idea taking shape in his mind. "Exactly like that. No one at the downtown location has met me in person except for the manager, Brenda, and she's on vacation for the next month." The next morning, Michael called his most trusted friend and business advisor, Raj, to his office. Raj listened carefully to the plan, nodding thoughtfully. "It could work," Raj admitted. "But you'll need more than just a baseball cap and sunglasses. Most of your staff have seen your picture on the company website and in the employee handbook." And so began Michael's transformation. A professional makeup artist, sworn to secrecy, helped him create a new look. His normally clean-shaven face now sported a full beard. Contact lenses changed his eye color from brown to blue. His straight black hair was now curly and tinted with subtle reddish highlights. Even his eyebrows were different. Thicker, more unruly. "I barely recognize you," Anna said when he tried on the full disguise at home. Their teenage daughter walked into the kitchen and did a double take, genuinely confused about who this stranger was. Michael created a new identity. Peter Wong, a middle-aged man with basic baking experience who had recently moved to the city and needed work. His friend Raj helped create a simple backstory and even set up a working phone number and email address for this fictional person. Raj also handled the hiring process, ensuring that Peter would be placed at the downtown location, the original Golden Crust Bakery that showed the most troubling signs of decline. The very place where Michael had once worked 16-hour days to build his dream. "Are you sure about this?" Anna asked as she helped him pack a small bag with the clothes his new character would wear. Nothing like the custom suits Michael typically wore to work. "What if someone recognizes you?" "I've thought about that," Michael said, packing a well-worn pair of jeans. "But most of the staff at that location has changed in the last year. The few who might remember me from the early days." "Well, They're looking for the owner in expensive clothes, not a new hire in jeans and work boots. The night before his first day as Peter, Michael couldn't sleep again, but for different reasons. A mixture of excitement and nervousness kept his mind racing. Would his plan work? What would he discover? Had his dream turned into something he wouldn't recognize? At 5 a.m., he kissed his sleeping wife goodbye and drove to a small motel near the downtown bakery, the place Peter was, supposedly staying while looking for a permanent apartment. Michael parked his luxury car in a long-term garage and took a bus to the bakery, arriving 15 minutes early for his 6 a.m. shift. Standing outside the familiar storefront, looking at the golden crust sign he had designed himself all those years. Michael took a deep breath. Through the windows, he could see staff moving around, preparing for the day. This was it. He was about to see his own creation through fresh eyes. Not as the owner dropping in for a scheduled visit when everyone was on their best behavior, but as a regular worker who would witness the true daily operations. With one last deep breath, Michael pushed open the door and stepped inside. "Hi," he said to the first person he saw, a young man arranging pastries in the display case. "I'm Peter Wong. Today's my first day." The alarm on Michael's phone buzzed at 4:30 a.m. For a moment, as he blinked awake in the small motel room, he forgot where he was. Then reality rushed back. He wasn't in his comfortable king-sized bed at home. He was Peter Wong, new employee, at Golden Crust Bakery, and today was his second day undercover. His muscles ached from yesterday's work. It had been years since he'd spent hours on his feet, lifting heavy flour sacks and cleaning equipment. But the physical discomfort was nothing compared to the worry gnawing at his mind. What he'd seen on his first day had been troubling enough. The slip in quality standards, the corner cutting, the general lack of care. But today, he was determined to look deeper, especially at the concerning hints of safety issues he'd noticed. Michael showered quickly, put on his disguise with practiced care, and caught the early bus to the bakery. This time, he arrived 30 minutes before his shift. He wanted to observe the opening procedures, something he'd once had strict protocols for. He found the back door propped open with a brick. Inside, only 2 staff members were preparing for the day. Half the number that should have been there according to his original staffing guidelines. "Morning," nodded Lily, the shift supervisor he'd met yesterday. She looked exhausted, dark circles prominent under her eyes. "You're early." "Thought I'd get a head start," Michael replied. Lily seemed surprised but grateful. "Good," Antonio called. "In sick again. That's the 3rd time this month. We're going to be scrambling all day." Michael followed Lily into the kitchen, noting how she had to jiggle the light switch several times before the fluorescent lights flickered on. The kitchen that he had designed to be a model of efficiency and cleanliness now looked tired and neglected. Mixers that should have gleamed stood dull with built-up flour paste in the crevices. The floor tiles, once pristine white, were now stained with permanent marks from spills that hadn't been properly cleaned. "Can you start on the sourdough?" Lily asked, handing him an apron that had seen better days. "Recipes taped to the wall there." Michael nodded and headed to the recipe, noticing immediately that it was different from his original award-winning formula, simplified with cheaper ingredients. As he gathered what he needed, he opened the walk-in refrigerator and felt a rush of warm air hit his face. "The fridge isn't cold enough," he said with concern. Lily shrugged. "Yeah, it's been running hot for about 3 weeks now. Regional manager says a repair guy will come eventually. We just try to use things up quickly." Michael felt his stomach tighten. Improper refrigeration temperatures could lead to spoilage and foodborne illness. This wasn't just a quality issue, it was a health hazard. As the morning progressed and more staff arrived, the kitchen became hectic. Michael watched carefully as a young man named Tyler was assigned to operate one of the large industrial mixers, the same one Michael had been told to use yesterday without any instruction. "Hey, has Tyler been trained on that machine?" Michael asked Lily quietly. Lily glanced over. "Not really, but it's not rocket science. We don't have time for formal training around here anymore." Minutes later, Michael's fears were confirmed when Tyler yelped in pain. The mixer had caught the edge of his apron and nearly pulled his hand in. The young man had yanked back just in time, suffering only a small cut instead of potentially losing fingers. "You all right?" Michael rushed over, grabbing a clean towel for the bleeding. "Yeah, happens sometimes," Tyler said with a shaky laugh that suggested this wasn't his first close call. "These old machines have a mind of their own." Michael helped bandage the cut, noting with increasing alarm that the first aid kit was nearly empty and severely outdated. The safety poster on the wall, required by law, was from 2018, missing years of updated regulations. By mid-morning, the heat in the kitchen had become oppressive. The massive ovens were working at full capacity, but Michael noticed something alarming. Several had broken seals around the doors, leaking dangerous levels of heat into the already hot space. "Is it always this hot in here?" he asked a baker, named Priya, who was wiping sweat from her forehead. "Pretty much," she replied, rolling up her sleeves to reveal a patchwork of small, round burns on her forearms. "You get used to it. Just try not to brush against the oven doors. They leak heat, like crazy." Michael's heart sank as he looked around and noticed that almost every long-term employee had similar burn marks, badges of their daily work in unsafe conditions. When the lunch rush hit, Michael was assigned to the flour storage room to prepare batches for the afternoon baking. The moment he stepped into the small space, he began coughing. The air was thick with flour dust that hung suspended in the still air, coating every surface and filling his lungs with each breath. There was no ventilation system running, another critical safety feature he had originally installed, but that was now apparently broken. "You should tie this around your face," advised Lynn, an older baker who joined him. She handed him a bandana. "Helps keep some of the flour out of your lungs. Been asking for the ventilation to be fixed for months." Michael tied the bandana over his nose and mouth, knowing it was wildly inadequate protection. Flour dust was highly combustible in confined spaces and a respiratory hazard with long-term exposure. The complete disregard for this basic safety measure shocked him to his core. During a brief lunch break, Michael gently brought up his concerns to Lily. "I've noticed a few safety issues: the hot ovens, the flour room ventilation, the refrigerator, temperature. Has anyone reported these problems?" Lily's face hardened. "Look, Peter, if you want to last here, you need to toughen up. We've all filed reports. Nothing happens. The regional manager, Thomas, only cares about cutting costs and meeting profit targets. Last guy who kept pushing about safety got his hours cut until he had to quit." "But these conditions are dangerous," Michael persisted. "Someone could get seriously hurt." "You think we don't know that?" Lily snapped, then immediately softened. "Sorry, it's just, we've all given up hoping things will change. If you need this job, you'll learn to live with it like the rest of us, or find somewhere else to work." The afternoon brought more concerning discoveries. The fire exit in the back was partially blocked by stacks of supply boxes. The electrical panel that controlled the massive equipment had a warning tag from an inspector dated 8 months ago that had never been addressed. One of the deep sinks had faulty wiring that gave a mild shock when touched, something the staff simply worked around by wearing rubber gloves. By the end of his shift, Michael was physically exhausted, but mentally alert with worry and anger. Back in his motel room, he pulled out a notebook and began documenting everything he'd seen. Every safety violation, every risk, every injury waiting to happen. Page after page filled with his increasingly agitated handwriting. These weren't just minor issues. These were serious violations that put his employees at daily risk of burns, respiratory problems, cuts, and worse. How had his bakery, his dream, become such a dangerous workplace? And more importantly, who was responsible for letting these conditions develop and continue? The regional manager, Thomas, seemed to be at the center of the problems according to staff comments. Michael remembered hiring him 3 years ago, an experienced retail manager with impressive credentials and a persuasive interview style. Had Thomas been cutting corners on safety to boost profits all this time? As midnight approached, Michael stared at his pages of notes, a cold determination settling over him. This wasn't just about quality anymore. This was about the safety and well-being of people who worked for him, people whose protection was ultimately his responsibility, whether they knew it or not. This ends now, he whispered to himself in the quiet room. But he knew he needed more evidence, more understanding of how deep the problems went. Tomorrow would be another day undercover, and he would dig even deeper into the troubling reality of what Golden Crust had become. Michael woke up on his third day as Peter Wong with a sense of purpose. After 2 days of witnessing the shocking conditions at his bakery, he knew he needed more than just his own observations. He needed to gain the trust of his co-workers, to hear their stories, to understand how these problems had developed over time. He arrived early again, this time bringing 2 boxes of hot tea from a nearby shop. The small gesture was immediately noticed as he set them down in the break room. "Did you bring those?" asked May, a quiet woman who worked the front counter. When Michael nodded, she smiled for the first time since he'd met her. "That's really nice. Nobody does stuff like that around here anymore. Just thought we could all use a pick-me-up," Michael said, pouring a cup for himself. "Yesterday was pretty rough." "Yesterday was actually a good day," said a voice behind him. It was Danny, a baker who'd been with Golden Crust for 6 years, long enough to remember when Michael himself had run the place, though Danny clearly didn't recognize his disguised boss. No major equipment breakdowns, no one got hurt. That's what passes for good around here now. As they sipped tea before the morning rush, Michael listened carefully as the conversation naturally turned to working conditions. He didn't have to probe much. Once someone started talking, it seemed like everyone had a story they needed to share. "I've worked at 3 different bakeries," said Lynn, the older woman who'd given Michael the bandana for the flour room. "This used to be the best one. Clean, organized, good equipment. The owner was really hands-on back then, but ever since he turned things over to the corporate team, it's been going downhill." Michael winced internally but kept his expression neutral. "What changed exactly?" "Everything," Lily jumped in. "First it was small stuff, cheaper ingredients, cutting staff hours. Then the maintenance budget disappeared. Now anything that breaks stays broken until it's completely unusable." Throughout the morning shift, Michael worked alongside different team members, asking casual questions and sharing his own made-up stories about previous jobs with poor conditions. The strategy worked. People opened up to him, seeing him as a sympathetic ear. By lunchtime, Michael had earned enough trust that when he asked Priya about her burn scars, she didn't brush him off. "This one," she said, pointing to a particularly bad mark on her forearm, "happened 3 months ago. The oven mitt had a hole in it, and I grabbed a hot tray. I asked for new mitts for weeks before that happened." "Did you get medical help?" Michael asked, genuinely concerned. Priya laughed bitterly. "I asked for time to see a doctor. Thomas, the regional manager, said if I left my shift I shouldn't bother coming back, so I put some ice on it and kept working." Michael felt a cold anger building inside him. This wasn't just negligence. It was a callous disregard for his employees' well-being. "That's illegal," he said quietly. "Sure it is," Priya replied with a shrug. "But who's going to fight it? We all need our jobs." During the afternoon lull, Michael was assigned to clean the storage areas with Tyler, the young man who had cut his hand on the mixer the day before. As they worked, Tyler showed Michael a scar on his palm from a previous injury. "Got this one 2 months ago. The dough slicer blade was loose, and when I tried to clean it, well, you can see what happened." "That looks bad," Michael said, examining the jagged scar. "Did you file for workers' comp?" Tyler shook his head. "I tried. The paperwork got lost twice. Then I was told that since I hadn't been properly trained on cleaning procedures, it was my fault anyway." "That's not right," Michael said, struggling to keep the anger from his voice. "No kidding. Hui, she used to work the morning shift. She got burned pretty bad last year when one of the ovens backfired. She filed for workers' comp too, and suddenly her hours got cut to almost nothing. She had to quit. After that, most of us stopped trying." As the day went on, Michael found ways to document what he was learning. During breaks, he'd step into the bathroom and quickly type notes into his phone. When no one was looking, he took photos of the most egregious safety issues, the faulty wiring, the broken equipment, the blocked fire exits. Late in the afternoon, An unexpected opportunity arose when Lily asked Michael to help her in the office. A pipe had burst in the ceiling and they needed to move papers before they got soaked. As they hurriedly stacked files, Michael spotted a folder labeled Maintenance Requests. "I'll get these," he offered, and Lily gratefully let him take over, while she dealt with the plumbing emergency. Alone in the office, Michael quickly flipped through the folder. His blood ran cold. Page after page of repair requests for the ovens, the refrigerator, the ventilation system, the electrical wiring, all signed by various employees and dated months or even years ago. Each one had been stamped, denied, or postponed with Thomas's signature at the bottom. Even more disturbing was a separate file labeled Incident Reports. Inside were descriptions of injuries much worse than what he'd been told about. A deep cut requiring stitches when a mixer guard broke off, a slip and fall on a perpetually wet floor, a severe burn from the malfunctioning oven that had required hospital treatment. Each report had been marked employee error or no liability by Thomas. Michael's hands shook as he quickly took photos of the documents with his phone. This wasn't just negligence. It was a systematic pattern of ignoring safety concerns and denying responsibility. When Lily returned, Michael helped her finish moving the files, fighting to keep his expression neutral despite the storm of emotions inside him. "Thanks for your help," Lily said, wiping sweat from her brow. "Most new guys wouldn't bother." "No problem," Michael replied. "We're all in this together, right?" Lily gave him a long look, then nodded slowly. "Yeah, I guess we are. You know, you're different from most people who come through here. You actually seem to care." That evening, as the bakery was closing, Michael overheard a conversation between Lily and Chen, an older baker who'd been quietly working all day. "Did you tell the new guy about the safety meeting?" Chen asked. Lily hesitated. "Not yet. I'm not sure we can trust him." "We need more people," Chen insisted. "If it's just the same 5 of us complaining again, nothing will change." Michael pretended to be busy cleaning until they noticed him. "Hey, Peter," Lily called. "Some of us are meeting tomorrow after work at Chen's place, just to talk about things here. Would you want to come?" Michael understood immediately. This was a meeting about workplace conditions, something the staff didn't feel safe discussing on company property. "Absolutely," he said. "I'd like to help if I can." Later that night in his motel room, Michael reviewed everything he'd learned and documented the photos of broken equipment, the injury reports, the maintenance requests that had been denied. It painted a damning picture of how his once proud business was now being run. He thought about the faces of his employees, Lily with her exhaustion, Priya with her burns, Tyler with his cut hand, Lynn with her wheezing from the flour dust. These weren't just workers. They were people who depended on Golden Crust for their livelihoods, who trusted that their workplace wouldn't harm them. Michael had built Golden Crust from nothing, pouring his heart and soul into creating not just a successful business, but a place where people were proud to work. Somewhere along the way, as he focused on expansion, he'd lost sight of what mattered most: the safety and well-being of the people who made that success possible. Tomorrow's meeting would give him even more insight into how bad things had truly become. And after that, Michael Chen would have some very difficult decisions to make about the future of his company and the people who kept it running. As he finally drifted off to sleep, one thought kept circling in his mind. How many other Golden Crust locations were being run this way? How many more employees were suffering because he'd taken his eyes off what really mattered? Michael's 4th day undercover began with nervous energy. The safety meeting at Chen's apartment was scheduled for that evening, and he was eager to hear what his employees had been planning. But first, he had another full shift to work, and another day to document the dangerous conditions at his bakery. As he arrived, the mood in the kitchen felt different. There was a tension in the air, a sense of unease that hadn't been there before. "Regional managers coming today," Lily told him in a hushed voice as they prepared the first batch of breakfast pastries. "Monthly inspection. Everybody's on edge." Michael felt his heart rate increase. Thomas, the man who'd been denying safety repairs and intimidating employees, would be here today. This was an unexpected opportunity to observe the regional manager in action. "Is there anything special we need to do?" Michael asked, trying to sound casual. "Just keep your head down and don't mention any problems," Lily advised. Last time, Wade pointed out the broken ventilation fan. Thomas wrote him up for negative attitude. We've all learned to just smile and pretend everything's perfect. The morning passed in a flurry of activity. Michael noticed staff hurriedly cleaning visible areas, hiding broken equipment in storage closets, and coaching each other on what not to say. It was clear they feared Thomas's visit, rather than seeing it as an opportunity to address their concerns. Around noon, the back door swung open and Thomas Blackwell strode in. He was a tall man with a crisp suit and an expression that managed to be both smiling and cold at the same time. Michael recognized him immediately. He'd personally hired Thomas 3 years ago, impressed by his polished resume and confident manner. Now, watching from behind his disguise, Michael saw something very different in the man he'd trusted with his business. "Afternoon, everyone," Thomas announced, his voice carrying over the noise of the kitchen. "Monthly inspection time. Lily, I'll need to see the sales reports first." As Thomas and Lily disappeared into the office, Michael continued working, keeping his head down but his ears open. He caught snippets of conversation as staff whispered warnings to each other. "Hide that broken tray. Don't mention the refrigerator. If he asks about your burn, say it happened at home." The atmosphere of fear was palpable. These weren't employees preparing for a normal inspection. They were people terrified of retaliation. When Thomas emerged from the office, he walked through the kitchen with a clipboard, making notes but asking few questions. He barely glanced at the equipment, instead focusing on production numbers and inventory levels. Safety didn't appear to be on his agenda at all. As Thomas approached Michael's workstation, Lily hurried over. "This is Peter, our new baker's assistant. Started this week." Thomas gave Michael a cursory look. "Getting up to speed?" "Yes, sir," Michael replied, keeping his voice different from his normal tone. "Learning a lot." "Good. We need people who can work efficiently." Thomas moved on without another question. For the next hour, Michael observed as Thomas conducted his inspection, which seemed to consist mainly of checking production numbers and criticizing staff for minor issues while completely ignoring the serious safety hazards throughout the bakery. Just as Thomas was preparing to leave, disaster struck. Juan, a new employee who had started just a week before Michael, was using one of the older ovens when a small explosion sound came from inside it. Flames briefly shot out from around the door seal, catching Juan's sleeve on fire. The young man shouted in pain and fear, slapping at his arm. Michael dropped what he was doing and grabbed the fire extinguisher from the wall, only to find it empty when he tried to use it. Thinking quickly, he grabbed a large container of flour and dumped it over Juan's arm, smothering the flames. In the chaos that followed, everyone gathered around Juan, whose arm was badly burned. The kitchen filled with the smell of smoke and burned fabric. "Someone get the first aid kit," Michael called out, helping Juan to a chair. Chen rushed over with the kit, but as Michael had noticed days earlier, it was woefully understocked. There were no proper burn dressings, just a few bandages and expired antiseptic cream. "He needs to go to the hospital," Michael said firmly, looking directly at Thomas. "This is a second-degree burn at least." Thomas frowned, looking more annoyed than concerned. "Let me see it first." The regional manager examined Juan's arm with a detached expression, then shook his head. "It's not that bad. Run it under cold water and wrap it up. We're short-staffed as it is. We can't have people leaving in the middle of a shift." Michael felt something snap inside him. 4 days of watching, documenting, and holding his tongue suddenly became too much. "He needs medical attention," Michael insisted, his voice stronger now. And this wouldn't have happened if the oven had been repaired when it was first reported, or if there was a working fire extinguisher on the wall like there's supposed to be. The kitchen went silent. No one ever spoke to Thomas this way. The regional manager's eyes narrowed as he turned to face Michael fully. "Excuse me? Who exactly do you think you are? You've been here, what, 3 days? You don't know how things work yet." Michael straightened up, no longer concerned with maintaining his cover. I know exactly how things work. I know that every maintenance request gets denied. I know workers' compensation claims mysteriously disappear. I know employees get their hours cut if they report injuries. And I know that what I'm seeing here isn't just bad management. It's negligence that's putting people in danger. Thomas's face flushed with anger. That's enough. You're fired. Get your things and get out. No, Michael said calmly, reaching up to remove his fake beard. I don't think I will. A collective gasp went through the kitchen as staff members began to recognize him. Michael peeled off the theatrical elements of his disguise, standing taller as he became himself again. Michael Chen? Thomas's voice cracked in shock. What is this? This, Michael said clearly, is me discovering what's been happening to my company when I wasn't paying attention. The stunned silence in the kitchen was absolute. Employees stared in disbelief, recognizing the founder and owner they knew from company photos and videos, but had never expected to see in their kitchen, especially not disguised as a new hire. Call an ambulance for Juan, Michael ordered, his voice carrying the authority he'd set aside during his days undercover. Someone immediately rushed to the phone. Thomas's shock quickly morphed into defensive anger. This is completely unprofessional. You can't just spy on your own company. And if you wanted to know how things were going, you could have just asked me. I've been meeting all the targets you set. Profit margins, expansion goals, cost cutting. Cost cutting? Michael interrupted, his voice icy. Is that what you call ignoring safety hazards, denying medical care, intimidating injured employees? He pulled out his phone and showed Thomas the photos he'd taken over the past few days. The broken equipment, the injury reports, the denied maintenance requests. I hired you to manage my bakeries, not to put my people at risk. These aren't just numbers on a spreadsheet, Thomas. These are people's lives. Thomas's expression hardened. You're the one who set those aggressive profit targets. Every quarter you wanted higher margins, more stores, better numbers. What did you expect me to do? Magic? Something had to give. The accusation hit Michael like a physical blow. Was Thomas right? Had his push for rapid expansion created this situation? Had his absence and his focus on growth over operations led to this dangerous environment? Before Michael could respond, there was a loud creaking sound from above, followed by a crash as part of the ceiling collapsed near the back door. A cascade of water poured through. The leaking pipe that had been reported months ago had finally given way completely. Staff members scrambled away from the falling debris and water. In the confusion, Michael saw Tyler slip on the wet floor and fall hard against one of the mixers. The young man cried out in pain as his arm twisted at an unnatural angle. 2 injuries in the span of minutes. This wasn't just a problematic workplace. It was a disaster waiting to happen. And it had been happening under his name, in his company, while he'd been focused on expansion plans in his comfortable corporate office. As the ambulance sirens wailed in the distance, Michael made a decision. This bakery, all his bakeries, would close today until every single safety issue was addressed. No more profits at the expense of people's well-being. No more growth at the cost of basic safety. The look he gave Thomas made it clear. This was just the beginning of the changes coming to Golden Crust Bakery. 1 week after the dramatic confrontation at the downtown bakery, Michael Chen stood in the center of a hotel conference room, facing the entire leadership team of Golden Crust. Regional managers, store managers, and corporate directors sat in uncomfortable silence as images flashed on the screen behind him. Photos of the dangerous conditions he'd documented during his time undercover. This isn't just one location, Michael said, his voice firm but calm. After what I discovered downtown, I hired independent safety inspectors to check every Golden Crust bakery. 15 locations and 14 had serious safety violations. The room remained silent. Some managers looked down at their hands in shame. Others shifted nervously in their seats. Thomas sat in the back corner, arms crossed defensively across his chest. I built this company from nothing, Michael continued, clicking to the next slide. A picture of the original Golden Crust storefront on its opening day 12 years ago. My first goal was to create amazing bread. My second was to create a place where people were proud to work. Somewhere along the way, I lost sight of that second goal. Michael clicked to another slide, this one showing Juan's burned arm and Tyler's fractured wrist from the accident. These are the consequences of our failure. Not just my failure as an owner who wasn't paying attention, but a collective failure of leadership at every level. He took a deep breath, looking around the room. I'm not here to place blame. I'm here to take responsibility and to fix this, starting today. Over the next hour, Michael outlined his complete overhaul plan. Every Golden Crust location would close for 2 weeks for thorough safety renovations. A $2 million emergency fund would address immediate repairs and equipment replacement. Every employee would receive full pay during the closure. But this isn't just about fixing broken equipment, Michael emphasized. This is about fixing a broken culture. He introduced a respected workplace safety consultant who would develop new protocols and training programs. An anonymous safety reporting system would allow employees to flag issues without fear of retaliation. And most significantly, Michael announced a restructuring of the company's leadership and incentive system. From now on, manager bonuses will be tied not just to profits, but to safety compliance and employee well-being, he explained. No one will ever again have to choose between meeting financial targets and keeping our people safe. As the meeting concluded, Michael asked the leadership team to return the next morning with their commitment to the new direction, or their resignation. Change starts now, he said simply, ending the meeting. That evening, in his office, Michael stared out the window at the city lights. A soft knock at the door interrupted his thoughts. Come in, he called. Lily, the shift supervisor from the downtown bakery, hesitantly entered. She had been asked to join the management meeting as a representative of the frontline workers. Mr. Chen, do you have a minute? She asked. Michael smiled. After working side by side with me for 4 days, I think you can call me Michael. Lily managed a small smile in return. That's still weird for me. I keep seeing you as Peter with the beard. I understand. What's on your mind, Lily? She sat down across from him, looking tired but determined. The staff wanted me to ask you something. They're worried that all this talk about changes is just talk. They've heard promises before. Michael nodded. He'd expected this. Trust, once broken, wasn't easily repaired. I understand their concerns, he said, and they're right to be skeptical. Words are easy. Actions matter. He pulled out a folder and handed it to Lily. This is the contractor agreement for the downtown renovations. Work starts tomorrow. Every single issue that was reported, from the ventilation system, to the refrigerator to the wiring, will be fixed. No shortcuts. Lily looked through the paperwork, her eyes widening at the figures. This is a lot of money. Yes, it is, Michael agreed. And it's just the beginning. He hesitated, then asked the question that had been weighing on his mind. Lily, be honest with me. How did things get so bad? Why didn't anyone contact me directly? Lily closed the folder and looked him straight in the eyes. With all due respect, Mr. Chen. Michael, when was the last time before this week that you actually visited the downtown bakery, the place where it all started? The question stung, because he knew the answer. It had been almost 3 years. We tried to reach out, Lily continued, but every email went to Thomas first. Every complaint got filtered, and gradually, people just stopped trying. We figured you were too busy with your expansion plans to care about old ovens and leaky pipes. Her words hit hard, but Michael knew he needed to hear them. You're right, he admitted. I got caught up in growth and numbers. I forgot what actually matters. But I promise you that changes now. 2 months later, Michael stood in the gleaming kitchen of the reopened downtown Golden Crust. The transformation was remarkable. New equipment hummed efficiently. Proper ventilation kept the air clear. Safety features functioned as designed. But the most significant change was in the atmosphere. Staff worked with a confidence and ease that came from knowing their well-being was prioritized. Regional Manager Thomas was gone, having refused to accept the new company direction. His place was Priya, the baker whose burn scars had been one of Michael's first clues about the safety problems. Her promotion had raised eyebrows in corporate, but Michael had been firm. He wanted leaders who understood firsthand why safety mattered. Morning check complete, Priya reported to Michael, showing him the new digital safety checklist that every location now completed at the start of each day. All systems green. Excellent, Michael replied, rolling up his sleeves. Then let's get baking. Priya looked surprised. You're staying to work? Every Friday, Michael confirmed, washing his hands at the sink. And I'll be at different locations throughout the week. No more hiding in the corporate office. This was his new commitment, to regularly work alongside his employees, to see conditions firsthand, to never again lose touch with the heart of his business. The changes at Golden Crust had cost millions and delayed expansion plans, but Michael considered it the best investment he'd ever made. Employee turnover had dropped dramatically, productivity had increased, and surprisingly to some board members, profits were beginning to climb again. It turned out that happy, safe employees made better bread and provided better service. 6 months after his undercover journey, Michael was invited to speak at a business conference about the transformation of Golden Crust. Many expected him to talk about the innovative safety systems or the restructured management. Instead, he shared a simple lesson. The most important ingredient in any business isn't capital or strategy, he told the audience. It's people. I forgot that once, and it nearly destroyed everything I'd built. I won't forget it again. As he finished speaking, Michael spotted Lily, now the manager of the downtown bakery, sitting in the audience. She gave him a subtle thumbs up, the highest praise from someone who had seen both the worst and best of his leadership. That evening, as Michael helped close up the downtown bakery, something he now did regularly, he paused to look around at the space where his journey had begun 12 years ago. The bakery had changed. He had changed. But the core of what made Golden Crust special had been rediscovered rather than lost. Ready for tomorrow's early shift? Lily asked as they walked out together. Michael nodded, feeling a deep satisfaction that no corporate expansion could ever match. Ready as always, some things are worth waking up early for. They turned off the lights and locked the door, leaving the bakery clean, safe, and prepared for another day of creating both excellent bread in a workplace where people felt valued. The true recipe for success, Michael had finally learned, included both